One of the most pressing concerns we have today regarding sustaining our life and future life on Earth is our supply of fresh water. From 1941 to 2011, the world's population tripled, but freshwater consumption quadrupled. In 2016, the World Economic Forum ranked freshwater crisis as the top global risk to industry and society over the next decade, which we're still in. Not climate change, which was number 2 on their list, but freshwater crisis, lack of availability. Failure to properly address climate change has now moved up to the number 1 concern of this forum this year. But that's not because freshwater crisis has improved. In fact, it's gotten worse. There's a growing gap between worldwide demand for water and what's really available. With so much demand, there's expected to be a 40% shortage in water supply in just the next 8 years. What you decide to eat has every single thing to do with this. Scientists are very concerned about water scarcity, but I think it's really more a matter of water management, isn't it? Yeah, sure it is. Instead of focusing on technologies, we should be first looking at choices. Is this a good choice? How about this choice? Is that a good choice? Are any of these good choices? They're all global averages on the conservative side. Are these good choices as compared to, say, these choices? It's quite a difference when you say, hey, it requires 400 gallons of water just to slaughter 1 cow or 1 pig in the United States. 400 gallons. Although water on Earth remains constant, the consumptive form it happens to be in does not. 4 out of 5 people now live within 30 miles of a water-damaged area, meaning sewer run out or polluted. More than 4 billion people experience severe water scarcity at least 1 month per year. There are nearly 300 transboundary river and waterways on Earth where multiple countries share vital running water supply. As we see water shortages over the next 8 years, we'll surely see droughts, famine, human sickness, and then we'll see conflicts, social unrest, and even wars. Indeed, those living downstream will be fiercely battling those living upstream for their water rights. Climate change is making these matters worse, but not causing them. Food choice and virtual water trading through food, especially with animal products, plays a much larger role than energy and fossil fuel use. In many areas of the world, freshwater scarcity coexists with hunger and poverty. Afghanistan, Sudan, and Saudi Arabia are raising livestock and crops to feed them while running their water supplies dry. 60% of Ethiopia's population suffers from hunger and thirst, and yet their dehydrated land is being used to support a growing herd of over 65 million cattle, the largest in Africa. Despite having an organization that's accomplished so many wonderful things in the world, Bill and Melinda Gates and their foundation should be frankly embarrassed about funding the proliferation of animal agriculture anywhere in the world, let alone here in dehydrated Ethiopia. And so it is for Mongolia, India, China, Portugal, and nearly every country in the world struggling with an increasing human population, the effects of climate change, and dwindling resources, and being strangled by their meat and dairy culture. So this has to include the country of California, doesn't it? And most of our Southwest United States. In the past 22 years, this mega drought in the Southwest United States has become so severe that it's now the driest 2 decades in that region in at least the last 1,200 years. So shouldn't we be using our water more efficiently? Regarding this freshwater topic, things aren't going so well in California, but if they've given thought to where most of the dwindling water supply is going, it's not to golf courses, and most of it's not to lawn care. Between 60 and 70% of the total consumptive water usage in California goes to livestock and crops to feed them. You know, being concerned and mandating restrictions that include not watering lawns for 2 days after it rains, or not using drinking water to clean sidewalks or to wash cars, and with $500 per day in fines for not complying, well, that won't solve California's problem. Governor Newsom mandated a 15% cut in water use this past year, but that won't solve much either because California hasn't factored in the water footprint of what they're eating. As an example, California uses 960,000 acres of land just to produce alfalfa. Anybody out there from California? Why do you do that? Because each one of those 960,000 acres of alfalfa requires 2 million gallons of water per year to irrigate, and they all get irrigated, every one of those acres. And guess where all that alfalfa goes? It goes to livestock. 5% to horses, the rest to livestock, 75% to dairy cows. And there are 2.5 million dairy cows just in California alone. This brings us to the point of virtual water footprint, which is going to be much more relevant in the future as freshwater supplies globally shrink. Our virtual water footprint in this instance is where we're extracting massive amounts of water from ancient aquifers to produce alfalfa or other feed crops that's then being exported to other countries. California alone is exporting 100 billion gallons of fresh water per year to China via hay to help feed China's 98 million cattle. Well, China's quickly closing in on Japan and United Arab Emirates as the leading importers of our hay and therefore our fresh water. These countries are running out of land and they're also running out of water. They know it's not wise to use their precious drinking water to produce hay for cattle. So they might as well get it from the United States because we don't have that figured out yet. In all, the United States exports to other countries more than 80 trillion gallons of virtual water per year, which is 2 times more than what's being exported by any other country in the world. And the vast majority of that water is tied up in livestock or in feed crops that are then shipped to livestock overseas. Using less water to brush our teeth or flush toilets or to do laundry or less time in the shower will save approximately 2 gallons of water per day for each act. Well, that's important. However, eliminating meat and dairy from one's diet will save, on average, over 2,600 gallons of water per person every day. If California stopped growing alfalfa for livestock just for 1 year, just stop for 1 year, the amount of water saved that 1 year would be enough to provide drinking water to the entire human population of the city of San Francisco. Yeah, not for 1 year, but every year for the next 12,500 years. Yeah, so you say, well, that's hard to believe. Well, okay, but math doesn't lie. So there it is, I put it up on the screen for you. Nor does where all the water is going in California. It doesn't lie. Further, the average household in the United States uses 76,000 gallons of water in 1 year, according to the EPA. Indoor use, about 33,000 outdoors. That's quite a lot of water, and it's what we're focused on in times of drought, how to reduce this. Well, the average person in the United States, though, consumes 274 pounds of meat in 1 year. Yeah, divided between 85 pounds of cow and 66 pounds of pig and 123 pounds of chicken and turkey, in addition to the 288 eggs and 655 pounds of dairy products, which equates to 956,000 gallons of water per person per year just to support that animal product diet. So now a more accurate view that the EPA should be broadcasting to everybody is that every household of 3 people in the United States, well, they use nearly 3 million gallons of water each year, not 76,000. The real amount is nearly 3 million gallons. And 96% of that outrageous water use is from their choice to eat animals. So whenever there's a drought or a water shortage anywhere in the United States, which there is and there will continue to be, does the government or your community ever step up and declare a state of rationing or eliminating entirely meat and dairy? Why not? Why shouldn't they? In 2015, the largest desalination plant in North America opened near San Diego. It cost $1 billion and provides drinking water to about 10% of the human population in that area. Well, there's a 2-to-1 ratio of seawater coming in and drinking water going out that's needed in the process. And the energy required to produce that water in this manner each day is enough to support the needs of 30,000 homes. Well, this approach to freshwater scarcity is very similar to those that I've seen in Israel, Saudi Arabia, Dubai, and other arid coastal countries around the world, now totaling more than 21,000 desalination plants. But the answer to our running out of a natural resource such as water, I don't think should begin by turning to another source of water and then causing other environmental issues and tapping that out as well. It seems the right way, or the right approach for our natural resources, is to use them in the most efficient manner possible. So instead of desalination, it seems San Diego should have considered spending $1 billion on educating their citizens on the environmental benefits of eliminating meat, dairy, and fish from their diets, among other benefits. And then they would have liberated between 50 and 90% more water each day, rather than their meager 10% gain by way of sucking water from our oceans. And this is no different than the plan to pipe water from Lake Michigan in the early 1980s to Nebraska, Oklahoma, and Texas, where it was discovered that the Ogallala aquifer was drying up from irrigating all the livestock and crops to feed them in the Corn Belt in the United States. Well, we're running out of water in the Corn Belt to feed livestock, so let's just build a pipeline up to Michigan and draw water out of the Great Lakes. They won't miss it. And never once, considering to simply stop raising and eating animals. Water problem solved completely, among other things, without a pipe. Well, recent satellite studies called GRACE, the acronym for Gravity, Recovery, and Climate Experiment, has shown that 40% of the largest aquifers on Earth, 40% are being overdrawn unsustainably and are becoming rapidly and irreversibly depleted. California's Central Valley Aquifer System is one of these, and also the southern portion of the Ogallala that we just talked about in the High Plains states. Well, they're two of the most at-risk ancient aquifers in the world of being entirely depleted in the next few decades. Others in significant trouble can be found in India, the northern plains of China, two of them in the Middle East. While some of the problem can be blamed on rice and wheat and irrigation, most of the ancient water used in these regions is going to livestock or crops to feed them. As an example, just one example, among other locations in the world, 6,000 water wells have dried up in California over the past 7 years. Well, over 50% of those dried up wells happen to be in just one county, Tulare County. These wells didn't dry up because of climate change. No, they didn't dry up because of climate change. Tulare happens to be the leading county in the United States for dairy production. That's where all the water went, to produce cow's milk at a ratio of about 1,000 gallons of water to produce just 1 gallon of milk. And for a clarified visual, here's a map of the wells drying up in the state of California. And I've circled Tulare County. Notice where all the dried up wells are located. And now here are the hot businesses in that county. Just for another bit of relevance, notice anything related to wasted water usage there? Let me see. They have stockyards and more stockyards and numerous cattle companies and more cattle companies and some livestock markets. Yeah, it might have something to do with it. I've talked about this water use disconnect 10 years ago and before to policymakers and think tanks and the public in California and elsewhere, but it's just no one seems to be listening. It's a bit frustrating. Of course, the threat is getting worse and it's spreading. Again, knowing and doing. Well water levels in the southern high plains states, such as Texas and Oklahoma, have dropped by more than 150 feet within the last few years. Nevertheless, that area is still trying to support some of the heaviest concentrations of beef cattle in the world. In terms of raw numbers, livestock consume 34 trillion gallons of fresh water each year in the United States alone. 34 trillion gallons by way of drinking water and water to grow crops to feed them. A number of scientists have questioned and vetted some of my numbers over the years, like this one. I'm quite used to it though. These type of numbers are buried, oftentimes with other data. Many times they have to be teased out of other research, extrapolated, and then verified. It's a bit tedious, and the results are incriminating for those industries involved. Let's face it, information like this that you see on the screen puts the meat and dairy industries on trial. What researcher wants to do that? Well, I don't mind. I don't have any problem doing it. So typically I provide any arguing scientist with all my data and computations like these that you see here. And then I say to them, there you go, do the calculations yourself, have at it, have at it. And after they do, my hope is always that they stop eating animals too, and then they spread the word, because they've all found out over the years that my numbers such as these are actually on the conservative side. So the question remains, even though we experience periods of less precipitation, is it drought that we should be most concerned about in California and across the Southwest United States, in the Middle East and elsewhere in the world? Or is it more of a problem of misuse of the freshwater supplies and resources that are available at any particular point in time? How we use them, how we manage it. Maybe this is the way we should begin viewing this issue of freshwater scarcity. So then these are the timelines for freshwater. It's not anything we should feel comfortable with. The NRDC predicts that 1/3 of all counties in the United States, that's over 1,100 counties spanning 14 states, will face water shortages by the year 2050.